Welcome to another episode of Facts. I'm your host, Stephen Boyce. We're doing a discussion about a phobia. Yeah, there's a lot of phobias out there in the world today. Some people are scared of snakes. I am one of those people. I am terrified of snake. It doesn't matter even if it's non-venomous. I'm still just terrified by the way they move and maneuver. They just freak me out. On the other hand, some people are very afraid of spiders. They have a phobia of any kind of spider, small, big. Me, I'm not afraid of spiders. I feel like I can just step on it and kill it or smack it and kill it, and I'm fine. But some people, they are terrified about spiders. Some people are scared of heights. Some people are terrified to go on huge roller coasters that have high altitudes and big drops. Even though they're braced in and locked in, they're still scared to death. Some people like me, I'm not really scared of heights, but I don't think I could ever go skydiving. But some people love it. They love the adrenaline rush. So everybody's a little different about their phobias. Well, we have another phobia I want to talk about today. I call it Romephobia. Romephobia is the fear of looking, thinking, or being perceived as Roman Catholic. It's a real problem. And I've actually noticed it lately because there's an unhealthy view about people who are Roman Catholic. One of the things that has come up recently in a lot of discussions, both on social media, comment sections, is a pretty unhealthy view about people in the Roman Catholic Church, Roman Catholic apologists, clergy, people that attend a Roman Catholic Mass. So much so that it created in me a response, one that I feel like we actually need to get into today and talk about, because I think that there's an unhealthy fear. Now, I understand that we have our objections to some of the Roman practices. As Anglicans and those a part of the Anglican communion, they have always kind of held this close relationship with a stiff arm against Rome since the English Reformation. But there's always been this honor for the See of Peter at the same time. And I'm actually seeing this go away in Anglicanism too, which is a little bit concerning to me, because Anglicanism has always seen the Bishop of Rome in a manner of respect, even if he's a bad pope, and even if he is a bad leader, makes bad decisions. There was always this honoring and this respect for the See of Rome, which was true of many of the apostolic churches. There was always a perception of honor toward the See of Rome and the See of Peter with the Bishop of Rome. We have letters upon letters of church fathers from the 2nd century to the Middle Ages that are replete of complimentary discussions about the See of Peter. But I've noticed, specifically down here in the Southeast United States, that there is an unhealthy view. The other day I posted something. I thought it was ironic, really, is I posted a statement where I felt like people needed to be on the alert and smarter about how they look at things. Terms. Let's take a couple terms. This is the one that really got me, and I was actually kind of surprised there was some negative pushback on this too, not just on the public side of it, but even privately. I said to my Baptist friends, now I'm going to expand that for this specific episode, to my Protestant friends who haven't explored church history beyond the past 500 years. Many of you continue to associate terms that are a part of the broader Christian tradition as exclusively Roman Catholic. And I gave my top 10. There's way more. But these are like buzzwords. They trigger people. So much so that if you even say something positive, and I watched this happen, I watched my wife post something on social media that was uplifting the Eucharist and something to do with children, and specifically our children dealing with a positive reaction to the Eucharist. And some guy just came in and bombarded the comments section on a really positive Christ exalting post, took it over because the word Eucharist was popery. So all the positive things that were said were instantly categorized as popery. That's Romish. And so what I want to do today in this episode is clarify we don't have to be afraid of the big bad Rome. Even if you're Protestant or Anglican or Baptist or whatever association you've chosen to put on yourself, you don't have to be afraid of Rome. There doesn't need to be a phobia to use terms that they use. And because they use it, if you use it, people are going to think I'm Catholic. People are going to think I'm a part of the Roman Catholic Church. And I don't want to be perceived as being a part of that church because I disagree with this, and this. So I'm not going to use that word at all. We need to lose that phobia, and we need to take back historic Christian terms that have been used beyond the borders of Europe for a couple thousand years and embrace them for the tradition and the biblical usage that they were always seen as. Rome can't take credit for everything, okay? Here's a couple terms that I gave illustration of. First of all, the term bishop or bishopric. There are bishops in more than the Roman Catholic Church. The Anglicans have bishops, archbishops. The Orthodox have these positions all through the different regions, whether you're talking about the Coptics. All the apostolic churches had bishopric. This isn't some new invention that Rome came up with. And we trace this term to the biblical terminology in Acts 1, 1 Timothy 3, Titus 1, the terms in the Bible. It's a Latinized term of overseer, but the episcopate is the bishopric. There's a lot of Latin and Greek that you can, whatever term you want to use there, it's been used in the Bible and through the centuries. It's okay. It's okay. It's not sealed and delivered only for Rome to use. Another word, Eucharist. Eucharist. Well, we're talking about the distribution of the body and blood of Christ and the sacrament. Eucharist is just a Greek term. And we use it, even Protestant groups that do some sort of liturgical practice in taking communion, whatever term you want to use there, Lord's Supper. There's a phrase in a lot of prayers that go into this, even in Protestant circles or Protestant leaning circles, that say it is right to give thanks and praise. It's like, do you realize you just Eucharist that? Like, you just use the word. So again, when we talk about the Eucharist, it's not wrong to use it in a broader Christian context. Another word, liturgy, which is a work of the people. It's a participation of the people. Liturgical practices are as old as the church because they're older than the church. The Jews had a form of liturgy. The Jews used liturgical practices in even how they were teaching their people through memorization and public speaking. The Lord our God, He is one. When you're talking about the Shema is a form that was used in Jewish liturgical practices. Another term, sacrament. Sacrament, first of all, is a biblical term. We've talked about this. It comes from sacramentum. It comes from a terminology of sacred. It's all in the Old Testament. Whether you want to talk about the Latin or the Greek that's translated over to Latin, the word is used. Sacred is used all in the Old and New Testament. Sacrament is used even by Paul, and he's even referring to marriage in Ephesians. This is the mystery, the mysterion, which was translated as sacrament, sacramentum. We're talking about biblical terminology. It's not wrong to view things as sacrament, or if you don't believe in a certain amount of sacraments, but you believe things are sacramental, there's nothing wrong with using the word sacramental as you relate to these practices. Real presence. Real presence, one guy posted just recently, real presence equals transubstantiation. Well, that is true if you're Roman Catholic. But again, there's a lot of people that believe in real presence that choose not to use the term, whether it's the Orthodox Church that holds more to a divine mystery, that chooses not to term really the object, or you have some that would hold to, whether they use the term or not, consubstantiation, closer into a Lutheran side, although they would fight you on that word. There's also people that believe in real presence in a pneumatic way, as John Calvin did. So there are multiple ways to look at even the words real and presence. That doesn't automatically mean, oh, well, that's transubstantiation. Yeah, in some circles it does. If you talk to an Orthodox, that's not what they're going to explain it as. It'll sound a lot alike, but if you talk to a Presbyterian or a Lutheran, you're going to get a little bit different answer on that. Another term, priest. Catholics aren't the only ones that have priests. You have Anglican priests. You have Lutheran priests. In the Orthodox practices of priests, you have priests all through the apostolic churches beyond Rome. And I'll go quicker. Vestments. Once again, same groups. All use vestments. Chasuble, Catholic. These terms are not exclusive to Roman clergy. It's okay to use the word. Creed. Creed is definitely not limited to Rome, because many of the creeds that we have, especially the Nicene Creed, Nicaea was an Eastern location. Yes, Rome was there, but it was a collaborative work across the entirety of the apostolic churches, East and West, North and South, coming together and form what became the Nicene Creed. It was never exclusively Roman. You could argue that parts of it have a Roman tradition versus an Eastern tradition, the Filioque. The West can say, yeah, that's a Western insertion. You know, the East could say that about the West. The West can say to the East, well, you should have the Filioque, and they'll say, no, the original one didn't have it. And I did a whole entire episode on that. I actually had a guest on to do that discussion. You can go back in the archives and find an entire episode on the Filioque. But the creeds as a whole, many of them which are like, many of them are not exclusively Roman. You could maybe make that case for Athanasian Creed, not the Nicene Creed or the Apostles' Creed. It was universal. Mother of God, the Theotokos, the Theotokos, whichever pronunciation you use. That terminology makes people uncomfortable. I posted something about the Theotokos not long ago, and I got bombarded by people. I'll never refer her as the Mother of God. I'll never call her the Mother of God. And it's like, you do realize, and their reason was because it's Roman Catholic. It's like, you do realize that the Theotokos term that was used moving forward in 431 came from Ephesus, the Council of Ephesus. Yes, it was a ecumenical council, but folks, that ecumenical council was done in the East. That's not a Roman Catholic council that was exclusive to Rome. Another one, the signing of the cross. Oh, that's Catholic. Only Catholics sign themselves. Excuse me. What? Tell me you haven't been around more than one church without telling me you haven't been around more than one church, because you go to any Anglican church, Lutheran church, Episcopal, I mean, any of these places, you'll find people crossing themselves. It's a regular practice, not exclusive to Rome. I wrote this. These terms are not exclusively Roman Catholic. They reflect the rich and shared heritage of the early church. Understanding their historical and theological context can help give you a more accurate view of Christian tradition without wrongly applying things. We need to be far more careful in how we handle this. So, Romephobia. Let's not be afraid of everything that sounds, looks, or can be perceived as Roman. when not all of it is Roman. It may have Rome involved in it. Rome may use the term or practice, but a lot of times it's not exclusive to them. It's okay to talk about icons. I didn't even put that one up there because I didn't even want to deal with it. I've got an icon sitting right behind me in the show today, St. Michael the Archangel, who has the devil pinned down when he was casting him down, as we see in the book of Revelation. Icons were a part of ecumenical councils. That was far beyond. In fact, I would say the icon part of things is bigger in the East than the West. I know those are fighting words for some, but if you go to most liturgical services or a mass between an Orthodox church and a Catholic church, a Roman Catholic church, there's more icons in most cases in the Orthodox church over against the Roman Catholic church. We have to be careful that we don't become so desensitized by this influx of frustration towards Rome because we don't agree with something in it, that we just start strawmanning anything associated with it and we beat it to death. And then we beat people to death who do choose to use terminology that is not exclusive to Rome, or practices that are not exclusive to Rome. And we have this fear. Oh, that's Roman. Oh, that's Roman Catholic. Oh, that makes me feel Roman Catholic. And we start getting debilitated by fear. That, folks, that is Romephobia. The cure for Romephobia is educate yourself on history. That's the cure. To educate yourself on history that is older than the Reformation. If you would just read, and if people that struggle with these things would read a book that is older than John Calvin, Martin Luther, Zwingli, John Knox, etc., if they would read something far, far earlier than that, from the time of Clement of Rome to Polycarp of Smyrna, to Irenaeus of Lyons, to Tertullian of North Africa, to Augustine of Hippo, to Jerome, who is in Rome, or Gregory, or any of the Desert Fathers, any of the Eastern Fathers, any of the North African Fathers, read any of them and save yourself from the embarrassment and unnecessary fear of being associated with something that isn't exclusively Roman Catholic to begin with. Now, let's just say that it is. Let's say there is one practice that is exclusively Roman Catholic. You have a friend. They love the Lord, faithful to their spouse. They honor the Lord in their life. They honor the Lord with their things. They honor the Lord with their attitudes. They're God-fearing people. You hear them mention a buzzword. Let's use one that is very, very much associated with Rome. Let's say that one day you're walking by the house, you're going out on a walk, and your neighbor who loves God, fears God, spends time, in prayer and helping their neighbors and meeting people, helping the poor. They're in church every week. They love the Lord. They share the gospel of Christ with people, and they love their neighbors themselves, and you have been a beneficiary of that. One day you're going out, you're walking the dog down the sidewalk, and lo and behold, the family's on the front porch, and you hear one of the family members of that neighbor start praying the rosary. And you see them holding a rosary. And you hear prayers like, Hail Mary, full of grace. And that Romephobia starts creeping up in your soul. And the tendency of the Romephobia is to call them idolatrous, heretical, all kinds of criticisms that would equal some sort of damnable completion about their life and character. That's the tendency that can happen. So let's just say there is somebody, but you know that you've seen the Christ likeness in their lives, and then they pull out the rosary. What do you do in a situation like that? Well, the way to handle that would be this. You don't throw out all of the things that you know is true about them because they believe that praying the rosary has spiritual benefit. You may differ from them and even have a good, healthy conversation that says, I don't think that's necessary, or I don't think you need that to see God work in somebody's life, or you can share your opinion and do some research on it and tell them why you won't do it and you don't do it, but you don't condemn them for doing it. That's the way we handle this. We capture the fear. We capture the uncomfortable element of something that we have sharp disagreement with. We don't run the people over and instantly call them a cult or a damnable heresy, as I've read online in the last couple hours. We don't do that. I don't think that's the way we're supposed to handle these things. We can disagree gracefully without exchanging the ad hom. You know what I mean? We can do it. We just got to deal with the phobia first. Look, I'm not saying that the Roman Catholics are perfect on this either. There's a lot of rock throwing on that end toward Protestant groups too. I'm not ignoring that. I call that out all the time. Look, I've done entire episodes criticizing the Roman Catholic Church, the Vatican, and Pope Francis. I don't even think that needs to be disputed. I've had entire groups of Protestants, Anglicans, and Roman Catholics on this program who all disagree with things that Pope Francis has done, which leads me to my final point in this episode. I posted another thing about Pope Francis. I think most of you probably know that his health is not well. He's had a severe case of pneumonia, a lot of issues because apparently he's already, when he was younger, he lost function, half a function or close to half a lung when he was younger. So he's already susceptible to any kind of respiratory issues. Pneumonia comes along, he gets a bad case of it. He's in critical condition. There's discussions of whether or not he'll even make it. In fact, he himself stated that his time has come. And they're already doing rehearsals for his funeral. I'm sure people a part of the bishopric and in the cardinals and in the Vatican are trying to prepare for that and get ready for the next pope and things like that. Well, I was scrolling and I saw the post from Justin Peters and I read it really quickly. And I was like, that was dumb. But then I had a friend send me another quote from it. And I looked at it a lot closer the second time, and it kind of made me mad. Justin Peters is a Protestant, very close to a John MacArthur kind of Protestant. Peters said this. He said, and he showed a picture of Pope Francis where Benny Johnson on Twitter had put out a report, breaking news. The Vatican reports that Pope Francis is in critical condition following the prolonged asthmatic respiratory emergency this morning. Now, this was as of yesterday. Peters retweets it and says, "This is sad. It seems as though Pope Francis will soon make the discovery that he is not, nor have any of his predecessors ever been, the head of the church." And he posts Ephesians 5:22 through 25 and Colossians 1:17 through 18. Peters makes two critical mistakes. One, his timing is terrible. And I called him out for this. I said, don't be like Justin Peters. He doesn't always choose the right time or place to voice his Protestant opinion on social media. And I stand by what I said. That wasn't the time or the place. Even if you do not like Pope Francis. And by the way, I am not a fan at all. I think he's been one of the worst popes in the last 100 years. I think those before him were far more intelligent theologically and orthodoxy-wise better and far beyond Pope Francis. I don't like the current Pope. I don't like what he says, and I don't like some of the things that he does. I think he's too flowery, and I think he's very surface level and not very good. Okay. So before anybody criticizes me about anything else, just hear me say that. And I think most of my Catholic friends here are hopeful and prayerful that in the passing of Pope Francis, the Lord will raise up a much stronger, under conviction and historical and orthodox bishop priest to replace him in the next conclave. So we hope for. What we hope for everybody, for everybody involved. Roman Catholic friends are hoping that. Anglicans are hoping for that. I'm sure the East is hoping for that. I don't think anybody would disagree. But Peter's made two mistakes. The first was his timing. The second is his claim. The Pope has never at any point claimed to be the so-called head of the church. And this is the part that threw me off. Somebody had commented and said, oh, no, yeah, he is. He claims to be. And I say to this, the Pope is seen as the visible head of the church on earth, but not as the ultimate head, because all Catholics believe that Christ is the head of the church. All the verses that were posted by Peter's, I haven't met a Roman Catholic that would differ on that. I said, according to the Catholic teaching, Jesus Christ is the true and supreme head of the church. The Pope, as a bishop of Rome and successor of St. Peter, is considered the vicar of Christ, meaning he serves as Christ's representative and chief shepherd over the visible church. Somebody tried to correct this, and they didn't seem to understand what was going on. And the more and more I started reasoning with this person, the more I realized that they have Romephobia, along with many others. This thread was full of people who said absolutely ridiculous things. For example, what does Romephobia look like this? All unrepented wolves and false prophets go to hell. If the head of the Mormons was in the situation, yes, it's sad, but in reality, biblical reality, this must be known and taught to people. And basically what this individual is saying is, yeah, okay, he's on his way to hell because he's a wolf, he's a false prophet, and as a result of that, he's going to hell. So he just condemned Pope Francis to hell because he's a false prophet and a wolf. This is the kind of thing I'm talking about. And then comparing it to Mormons, and I love, somebody actually jumped on this comment, couldn't believe it. He said, the head of the Mormon church and the Pope are not even close to comparable. And he responds, the other response says, well, I'm a Christian and all false prophets and wolves are on the wrong side of God in Scripture. So he's basically saying they're basically the same. The response back was, Pope Francis, though he is far from being the best Pope, is a Christian, not on the wrong side of God. See, this is that Romephobia. It places him in the cult process where now the Roman Catholics are in the same group as Mormons. Never mind the fact that the Roman Catholic Church is far older than the Mormons and far older than anybody's church in the comments who's condemning these people to hell. The Roman Church goes back to Peter and Paul. I guarantee it's older than most of these Protestants who are on here condemning all the Catholics to hell right now. And there's multiple comments. I couldn't believe how many people got on here. Things like, Pope only succeeds Peter in his denial of Christ. One other gets in here and pretty much says that he is damned after he dies. One says he will die and go to hell. The point of the post was we need to be praying for a man who's dying, who is a world-known spiritual leader in the church. I'm going to repeat this since people don't always listen. I'm not a fan of Pope Francis. I think he's one of the worst popes in the last 100+ years. I don't know his spiritual position with Christ. I would hope it's well. He is certainly unhealthy in a lot of his approach. There's no doubt. But I would never condemn the man to hell. I'm not God. I'm not his judge. But he, being the Pope, will stand before God and give a major, major account to how he led the church. I know that. To decide his destination after death is foolish. Romephobia. Romephobia. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. People struggle with Romephobia. That is the fear of sounding, thinking, acting, or being perceived by others as being Roman Catholic. That phobia has crippled many Christians from embracing good historical truths, realities, and practices. We heal the phobia. We deal with it. The prescription for it is to go back into church history before the Reformation and study terms, titles, artifacts, theology, names, places, and associate those things with their proper historical framework. And we won't be so scared to do things and say things and be a part of things that have words that sound too scary Romish. Romephobia is a real issue that needs to be healed in a Protestant age where a lot of the churches around here do not like or do not care for or afraid of associations with Rome, where most of the time it's not Rome exclusively that they're dealing with. And even if there is something they're dealing with, we need to be able to be at the point, if you're a Protestant or an Anglican, whatever you are, a Baptist, a non-denominational, where you can pray for the Pope without wishing him to hell or damning him to hell or already securing his eternal destination. That's where you need to be. If you're at a place where you're able to condemn him to hell and not be able to pray for him and say it's sad, unfortunately, but the guy's doomed, he's going to hell, he's a false prophet, he's a wolf in sheep's clothing. If that's where you are, if that's where you're at, you've got Romephobia and you need help. You need help because you're unhealthy. You're an unhealthy Christian. And we're more concerned about you at this point than somebody like Pope Francis. We're concerned about if you truly understand the gospel, because that's not what the gospel teaches. Another thing that we can do is to move forward is to better equip ourselves with people that are around us who are not against us, but for us, because we're all part of the banner of Christianity and we're getting slim out here. The last thing we need to do is start pulling swords on each other. Is find a way to disagree with people that we don't agree with, in the sense that we can have conversations and communication that doesn't equal calling each other heretics and damnable like this. We can fix that problem. We can go a long way. Well, folks, that is what I call Romephobia. I'm glad you tuned into this episode. Hopefully it was informative or instructive, or maybe you're more mad than you were when you started this episode. I don't know. Whichever the case may be, hopefully you got something from it. Thanks for tuning into this episode. If this is your first time, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. If you're on YouTube, if you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, please make sure you hit the follow and you get notifications when new episodes release, so you're one of the first to actually listen to them. Make sure you can leave, share them, leave comments, leave whatever you want. Give us your feedback. We'd love to have your feedback. And as always, folks, grace and peace to you. God bless.